Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to make this adorable little piggy in a mailbox card using the Bad Influence and Love Enclosed stamp sets by Honeybee Stamps. So let's jump right in and get started. So this is a watercolor block by Arches. So you can either get the pads where the paper is loose and then you would tape it down to a board, or you can buy these watercolor blocks where it's already taped down for you. So the way to open it is to just put the edge of your palette knife right underneath the top there, and then you just slit it open just like a letter all the way around until you get to the other side. So I'm showing this because my first time with a watercolor block, I accidentally bought it. I thought I was buying a watercolor pad, and then I got this and I didn't know how to use it until I watched a video on YouTube. So I thought I would share with you. And I've also found that these blocks are really, really great because you don't have to tape your images down. Which just makes it really easy to use. And again, there's that little tab where you stick your palette knife when you're ready to cut the individual sheet off. So to start, since we're going to be watercoloring our images, I wanted to find a nice shade of peachy pink for our little piggy, who is going to be one of the focal images on this card. So I thought I would mix some of my colors up. So I'm taking a yellow, a red, and a white, and I'm making different shades of pink or peachy pink, just trying to figure out which of the colors is going to work nicest for our piggy. And I also thought that I could use this sheet for some other images that I'll be cutting out. So we're actually not going to use this watercolor block in this card, but our little piggy is going to be colored in these colors. So I just thought it would be fun to add this in to show you the process for how I kind of pick up colors. And now I'm just cutting this sheet off of our watercolor block, and then I'm going to set it aside. If you had time, the best thing to do would be to leave the sheet on the block until it dries and then remove it. But I wanted to use my block to do another color swatch. And for this swatch, we're going to use some blues. So we're going to start with some really light blues, and then we're going to move to some gray blues, and then to some brighter blues, and then some darker blues. And we are actually going to use this panel to cut out our mailbox. I just thought that these blues would make a really, really nice kind of dreamy mailbox shade. The blues that I'm using here are starting at the end. That's kyanite, and then cerulean, and then Payne's blue gray, and then some indigo, and then some Mayan dark blue. And I think those are all of the colors that I'm using here. So you can also use distress inks if you wanted to do a similar gradient. You could use Copic markers, or you could just use plain, single color cardstock if that's what you prefer. I've just been loving watercolor lately, so whenever I get a chance to kind of fit it into my projects, I do. So these are the two stamp sets we're going to be using. This is a little piggy from the Bad Influence stamp set that was part of Honeybee Stamps' February Valentines release. He's so adorable. And we're going to stamp him twice because I want to show you two different color combinations to paint him with. We're going to make one pretty pinky shade, and then we're going to make another peachy pink shade with our watercolors. And then I'm just going to stamp a bunch of the envelopes from the Love Enclosed stamp set, and then we're going to watercolor those also. So we're going to watercolor them in some rainbow shades, and then we are going to also, I'll show you how to watercolor them with some gray shades in case you just want some white envelopes as well in watercolor. And then these little hearts are from the little Be Mine freebie, the little bee that was part of the release that you receive for free if you spent $60 or more. And then these little heart postal marks, I'm just going to add those to two of our letters, and then we'll get to watercoloring. So for the watercolors, I took a red, a yellow, and then a white. And I mixed those all together, and I came up with a peachy pink and then a more traditional like pale pink. This little guy that we're coloring now is the pale pink, And then the little guy up top we'll cover with some of the peachy mixture. And we're going to do 2 coats for both of our little pigs. So this is going to be the first coat, and then we'll go back after we finish the envelopes and lay down another coat. And watercolor, you don't have that much control over it. So I tried to be really careful about where I was going to add that extra dark shade. So I put it like under the ear, under the chin, and then towards the lower part of the body, and just tried to cut it off there so that it didn't bleed too much. So now let's go ahead and start with our peachy pink pig. I think this is my favorite of the 2 combinations. I think this is the most piggy color of the 2. So we're just going to go in and add that mixture, the darker parts along the edges. And then I just put a little water on my brush to kind of pull the color out from the edges into the middle. And I'm just going to color his little ear there, add a little more color along the edges, let it bleed a little bit, and then we'll let it dry and come back to it. So this is green gold, and this color I think I like, but then the color that I mixed into it, which was the sap green, I wasn't that crazy about it. Might have gotten a little contaminated with another color, I think, but we're gonna fix it. The good thing about watercolor is if the color is non-staining, you can kind of just go in with some water and fix things up a little bit. So that's what I did there. And now this is Carbazole Violet. It's a really, really deep purple shade, and that's a really light wash, even though the color is pretty bright and vibrant. And then this is a more concentrated form of the pigment, and a little bit too much. So I'm just trying to take some of it out there by putting some water on my brush, and then drying my brush and trying to pick up some of the excess pigment there. This is probably one of my favorite shades. This is Sleeping Beauty Turquoise, and this pigment is actually made with ground up turquoise stones from the Sleeping Beauty mine in Arizona. And I'm just going to take a thin wash of it and then add some little shadows underneath the flaps of the envelope there. I just love that turquoise. This is Phthalo blue green or Phthalo turquoise. I can't remember which, but it's definitely a phthalo color. And I just love the bright vibrance of it. And I like the way that it kind of complements that Sleeping Beauty turquoise on the bottom. And I'm just trying to pull a little bit of the color up in some areas, just so that it doesn't look flat. And I'm just doing that by using my brush and then wiping it off on the paper towel. And then adding just a little bit of water there. And then this color here that I'm using is another pink gem stone that's ground up into a pigment. I can't remember the name right now, but I also think I used a little bit of it in the Piggy color over there. I'm just going to add a little bit more in the corner and then take some of the color out from the center with my brush. And then this is the yellow that we use to mix the peach for the pig. It's just a nice bright yellow. I'm going to add a little bit of shading on the lower right hand corner. And then we can move on to our next envelope. This one is ultramarine blue, and it actually, I think this is the first time that I've used this color on its own, and it didn't really behave the way I was expecting it to. It's interesting how watercolors are like that. They all sort of they dry differently. Some are dry opaque, some are pretty translucent, some of the colors move very well, some don't. And this one, as you'll see on that top flap, the color just kind of just faded really, really quickly in that one area. Could also be maybe there was too much water there. And then this is going to be our little orange envelope, and I'm using Aussie Red Gold here. This is one of my favorite colors. It reminds me of the YR23 and 24 in Copics, one of my favorite colors there. And then I just use that for a little shadowing on the yellow envelope as well. Just trying to fix that envelope. And now we're just going to use a plain red here for the little heart. So they're going to appear pretty flat. It was too small of an area to really try to get any highlights or any different shades of red going on. So I'm just going to color them all the same way. And I'm using a sable brush here, which holds a lot of water. So that's why I don't have to keep reaching back to add some more paint to my brush, because it's all kind of held in the belly of the brush there, and it just flows through the tip. So that's one of the benefits of the natural fiber brushes. And then once we're done with this, I thought that we also needed some white envelopes. So I'm going to go ahead in a second and stamp some more. But first, let's add our second coat to the little piggy. So for this little peachy pig here, I just used the same color that we added for the first coat and just kind of concentrated it along the edges, just so that there'll be some nice shadows there, like right underneath the chin. And then that little spot that bled up into the cheek, I just wiped it off with my tissue paper there. Not tissue paper, just a tissue. Then I'm just trying to blend that in a little bit so that the center of his body is nice and light. And then we're going to do the same with a little pink piggy here. Just adding the color, the darker color along the edges of the body in the upper right hand corner. And then a real light wash in the center. And then a little bit more color right underneath the little cheek there. And then I'm just going to blend it together. And then we'll add our postage stamps. So I'm just taking some red, and these are dry at this point, or mostly dry. So it's not going to bleed into the rest of the color around them. But still, if you are using watercolor, it's good to be careful when you do this step. Okay, for the white envelopes, I just took some Payne's gray. And for this envelope, we're going to put the gray all over the envelope and then add a darker little bit of pigment in the lower right-hand corner. And that is going to fade back a little bit so it won't look that dark. And then for this one, I just added a wash of water and then some very light color along the edges. And I'm even going to take some of the color away with my brush here. And then I made a mistake and I picked up the Mayan dark blue instead of the gray. So I'm like, okay, I guess this is going to be a dark envelope. So I just went with it, just spreading the color out over the envelope. And now I'm going to try that technique I was going for with this one. So just a clear water wash and then very light wash of the Payne's gray along the bottom. And then the same for this envelope as well. Just a wash of water and then really light gray towards the bottom. And then for our little stamps here, I'm using a pink and then a little green. So nice light colors. And I've die cut all of our pieces off screen. So I also use the fluttering hearts or the pierced hearts cover plate here. So I after I die cut our mailbox, I also ran it through the fluttering hearts die so that we have that nice imprint on the mailbox. And then we're also going to have that same imprint on our card panel that the mailbox is going to sit on. So I want the mailbox to appear as though it's open. So I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. This is the little label for the mailbox, and I just stamped XOXO there. And then this is the little connector piece that will connect the mailbox lid to the mailbox itself. So I'm just going to attach that. And I'm just going to hold that down right here. And so now we have a little mailbox that looks like it's opening. And then I'm going to put the label, the mailbox label, on top with some foam tape. And I just love how that looks. I really like the watercolor paper here with that blue gradient. And then for our little piggy, we're going to have him sticking out of the lid for the mailbox, and we're going to have him surrounded by a whole bunch of letters. So it just is so adorable. So it looks like he is going to be going along with all these other little letters as a package to a very lucky someone to receive this little piggy. And then I will show you the sentiment that we stamped on the inside in a second that matches the card. But first, we're going to add some little hearts, and I thought having some floating hearts above the little piggy's head would be fun. So I just took some acetate, cut them into thin strips, and then we're going to add these little hearts. These hearts come from the little bee stamp and die set. And I'm going to add adhesive to the entire back here. And then I'm just going to place my little floating heart where I think it looks right and just press down with a mailbox so it sticks. And then once I have them together, I'll stick the whole thing onto the card base. And we'll just add a couple more decorations. So we'll add a little heart right here on the right of the mailbox and then another one on the left side. And now that looks pretty good to me. And so there you have it. So here is our little piggy in a mailbox cards. And the sentiment says, sending you hugs and kisses. So perfect sentiment for this adorable little card made with the mailbox die by Honeybee Stamps and the Bad Influence and Love Enclosed stamp sets. I hope you enjoyed this video, everyone, and I really hope you give this card a try. It is a lot of fun, and I think it would make a real special card for someone that you love. Thanks a lot, and I will see you again soon in the next video.